what happened, y'all? Like, share, subscribe, Cash App, and yeah, my first try at a live turned out to be a major fail, so I'm gonna try that some other time. But yeah, I just had to get in about DMX, man. He finally made that transition. Obviously, prayers, good wishes to his family, his loved ones, those who are close to him. Realistically, I mean, obviously, when he got sick or when he had gotten a heart attack, I mean, realistically, all right? I know people were sending well wishes and stuff, but dude had 2 strokes in the past 10 years, right? He's always had problems with hard substances, heavy drugs. The last stroke, he was in a Yonkers parking lot at a hotel where, you know, basically they had to resuscitate dude to make sure he was alive. They said that he had COVID as well. All right. I mean, it's just not a good combination. He was off the ventilator for 30 minutes. All right. So he was deprived of oxygen for 30 minutes. Right? Brain dead. Okay. I mean, I've been through this before with close ones. My mother, to be honest with you. And there comes a point where, you know, you just got to make that tough decision. The DNR decision, do not resuscitate. It was just inevitable. All right. So, because after that 2016 stroke, dude sounded terrible. And that's one thing with X, especially towards the end, he just didn't have good people around him, because he had the stroke in February of 2016. 4 months later, dude is on the Breakfast Club. All right. And as I said, he sounded horrible. Whoever's idea that was, I mean, they should have gotten fired on the spot. And during this time, he was still out there doing shows. Now, his shows, he's an intense performer because he's an intense dude. So he's doing shows pretty much while he's sick. All right. His voice is still trying to get his voice back. Right. I mean, I don't know whether he was being forced or not, because maybe people were pushing him out there, because the dude, he made a lot of money over his career, but he racked up a lot of debt. Okay, child support, taxes. Boy, he racked up a whole lot of stuff. So I don't know if his creditors or other people were just forcing him out there, but he didn't have great people around him. All right, and the last time, as I said, he was found unresponsive, and, you know, from a heart attack. And, you know, the interview, I mean, the dude gave some classic interviews, I'll be honest. But, yeah, it just was pretty bad. And when that happened, I said to myself then, I said, listen, with everything this dude's been going through, I don't see him making it to 50. I just didn't see it. I didn't see him making it to 50. Well, obviously, he made me look stupid because he did get to 50. But then when I saw this and, you know, another drug-induced heart attack, I'm like, and then to hear all the other stuff, not being deprived of oxygen, this or that, I'm like, yeah, you know, if he lasts a week, because, you know, sometimes some people, some families, believe it or not, they will leave you in the hospital only because, obviously, if you're still getting, you could still be getting money if the person's alive, believe it or not. Okay, this is why if you go to any old folks' homes that have you, and you look at people who, like, let them go already, they're still there because, believe it or not, their kids are still making money off you. Okay, or somebody close to you is still making money. It's a pretty tough and it's a cold business in that effect. But yeah, but eventually they had to make that tough decision. And listen, you don't say this about too many artists, but X was one of a kind. This is this once in a generation type of performer. All right. To me, he was the next Tupac. One of the realest and one of the hardest that ever did it. What do I mean? A lot of these rappers, as you know, they're actors. They're actors. Okay, I mean, when you heard this dude's lyrics, he sounded like he could, in fact, do what he did. Okay, you can hear that authenticity in his voice, that he came from that place. And one of the reasons why he lasted so long and why he resonated with a lot of people in the underbelly of society is because he lived that. But not only that, he explained how he became that. You know, I mean, when he paints a picture, it's just vivid pictures of what he would do, and it was honest. You know, where other rappers, you know, he wasn't this dude talking about, you know, hanging around with other tough dudes and then it rubbed off. No, he was a tough dude. Okay, Rough Riders, and it said in one of the articles that he was a leader of Rough Riders, which wasn't true. Okay, but he was one of the most popular in the group. I mean, Rough Riders, he was one of the artists, obviously Eve, Dragon, The Locks. I mean, Rough Riders encompass a whole bunch of artists, but he was just one of the more popular ones, or the most popular one, I should say. And he was that guy that everybody fed off of. And with most rappers, as I said, they talk about selling bricks and, you know, rolling with Colombians and all the drugs they sold. He never talked about that. With all the, you know, felonious activity that he talked about, it was never that. Okay, his MO, robbery, assault. That was his MO. His MO was pretty much robbery and assault. So he was on his albums. A lot of people see, and I'll speak about this later. You know, obviously when X died, a lot of people look at him one-dimensionally. This dude was a very well-rounded artist. Okay, I mean, you're out from the outside looking in, you see the growl, you hear the what? You hear all that, the raspy voice, the harsh demeanor. No, the man was a well-rounded artist. Obviously, he talked about robbing dudes, and you heard a lot of MF in his song, and you heard a lot of MF, you heard Suck My You Know What, and all of that. But he also talked about his experiences with women, with baby mamas. He actually had, you know, songs that were like love songs. You know, he was very much the red pill, by the way, very much. All right, he talked about his wife. How many dudes on their albums talk about their wife, how they want to be with them, how in their love songs with chicks like, listen, we can't mess with each other because I got a wife at home. You see, there was a lot of complexities with DMX. Again, to me, if the drugs didn't overtake him, he would have been the second coming of Tupac. That's my opinion. All right, so to reduce him to just some thug gangster rapper, first of all, it's lazy. That's lazy thinking. A lot of dudes, unfortunately, they get caught up in looking at the end result of what this system of oppression can do to you. And they don't look at the full picture. And don't get me wrong, DMX, because we're going to speak about the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, with all that he's gone through in his life, he's clearly accomplished a lot. Sold a lot of albums, you know, memorable movie roles and what have you. But at the same time, he gave a lot of pain too. All right, throughout his life, he gave a lot of pain. So I'm not going to sit here and deny that. All right, coming up, I mean, it took him 13 years to get his record deal. 13 years, starting from 14. He was in juvie at 7. All right? His pops left him at 7. He was in juvie at 7. His mom deserted him. All right? So he had a pretty rough, hard scramble existence. And I get that. But to reduce him to some thug gangster rapper, that's gimmicky. Okay? No gimmick. See, the entertainment world can push a gimmick on you, but the public is going to be fooled only for so much. Only for so much. They're not going to, any gimmick, no gimmick is going to sell 5 #1 albums. That just doesn't happen. All right? You have to be well-rounded. You got to be creative. This dude was creative as hell. And besides, I mean, to the people who attack his demeanor, what he put out, right? His quote-unquote toxicity, with what I laid out with his upbringing, what in the fuck did you want him to talk about? I mean, what exactly did you want him to talk about? And these same people, understand, because there is a contingent of individuals who love blaming rap and hip-hop, and you say the N-word too much, and they try to blame that for all the ills of black society. All right, they'll see a DMX and they'll say, "Oh well, look at what he put out." They never even heard any of his songs. All right, but these same people, understand this. These same people that attack rap now attacked R&B in the 80s. They're the same ones who attacked funk bands in the 70s. They're the same ones who attacked Motown and Gamble and them back in the 60s. They're the same ones who attack rock and roll in the 50s and so on. Until blacks are pushed out of those genres and all of a sudden whites take it over. So you attack rock and roll in the 50s, eventually white people take it over. And they pasteurize it, they make it more, I don't know, milk toast, and eventually now it's legit. They attack soul music throughout the 60s and 70s. Eventually, whites take it over. Now you got nothing to say. You attack blues way in the early 1900s. Eventually, whites have country. Now, all of a sudden, it's not that bad a thing. Even though the country music, what do they talk about? I mean, what are they glorifying? They're glorifying drinking, right? Getting drunk. They're glorifying gambling. They're glorifying the honky tonk, which is nothing but an overhyped strip club. But you got nothing to say about that. But black people do it. Blacks create it. This is a bad thing. So what created a DMX? Have you ever thought about that? And DMX gave you the courtesy of telling you his life to let you know what made him who he was. Again, hurt people hurt people. He put a lot of certain people through toxicity in between all the entertainment and the funny. He was one thing about DMX, because in hip hop, DMX was never known as like one of the greatest. Like when you're talking about one of the greatest MCs that ever did it, and you're going to hear that now that he's passed, people are going to try to put him up there, and he's not. He never thought of him that way. All right. But as I said before, X was one of the realest that's done this, that's ever spit on the mic. Like you can feel his energy. But one thing that DMX did, he let his hair down. You heard a lot of wit, a lot of humor, and I guess when you go through a lot of pain, like a lot of the best comedians have some of the most tragic backstories. DMX was the same way, but when you hear his songs, even when you hear him talk, like I said, he gives some of the greatest interviews. Funny as hell, witty as hell. When people talk about some of the greatest rappers ever, Kool G Rap's name always comes up. And to me, Kool G Rap, his first 2 albums, all right? Like, nobody can mess with him lyrically. Problem with Kool G Rap, he was just too serious. After his second album, he still had skill. But he never cracked any humor in his rhymes. He never laughed or what have you. Everything had to be, I'm always this gorilla thug. All right? And to me, that kind of hurt him. Like, Kool G Rap, as great as he was, he's never had a classic album. And I think that's one of the reasons dude never let his hair down, ever. Never got, it was always hard in your face one way. Where X, as hard as he was, he always found the light moment in everything he did. Even with some of the stuff that he spoke in his album, it's funny as hell. But no one wants to deal with the DMXs of the world. Because he appealed to the underbelly, the guys who are like the shooters. Guys who do all the dirty work. Guys who are putting the work out in the street. That's who he appealed to. But you don't want to go back into the backstory of what created that to begin with. All right? I talked about his mother leaving him. I've talked about his father leaving him at 7. I talked about the juvie stints all throughout his life. Okay? He also went to jail. Did hard prison time, I believe, for robbery. And he spent time in prison with another rapper by the name of K Solo. And those two had gotten into a kind of a beef because K Solo accused this dude of stealing his style. K Solo, this was back in the late 80s. He had a style where he used to rhyme. Like he would say his rhymes were like, I would SPEL, like he was spelling his rhymes. You know, if you just type in K Solo, look for the Spellbound or Letterman, and you'll see what I'm saying. But K Solo, because they went back and forth, right? K Solo accused him of being raped in prison. Yeah. He accused DMX of being raped in prison because they were in the same cell block. So this is what I mean. I don't know what this dude has gone through. And to be honest, if just to be real about X, some of his rhymes, I mean, he has a lot of that, you know, he delves into a lot of that prison rape culture. He just does. Okay, some of his rhymes, and, you know, when you hear him screaming faggot, or when he talks about, you know, what he do to a dude, he gets into that prison rape culture a lot. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit down and accuse him. I mean, if it did happen, as far as I'm concerned, this is this dude's life. This dude, as I said, I don't know what he went through in his life, but he clearly went through a lot of pain in his life, and he just, over time, he made pain his friend. Over time, this dude made pain his friend. So a lot of his songs, they were dark, but a lot of his songs were party songs. You know, Party Up. Also, you know, like anthems that athletes can really rock to. Party Up was one. What's My Name? Obviously, you know, Stop Being Greedy. I mean, just he had a lot of upbeat parties, like Get It on the Floor. He's just a very energetic, upbeat dude. He also had songs where he's just spitting. Okay, he's very autobiographical, very philosophical. I mean, when you read the Bible a lot, you're gonna sound like a philosopher. All right, and he had prayers on each of his albums. For me, I know his his first album, everyone's gonna say was his best album. Number three, actually, this and Grand Champ will be my second album as far as the albums that he had. His first album, Grand Champ, his second album I liked. No, Grand Champ was actually, that was his fourth album, excuse me. I believe that was his fourth. The first was Dark as Hell is Hot. Second was Blood of My Blood. Third was Then There Was X. Fourth was a Grand Depression. Yeah, it was his fifth album, Grand Champ. That, believe it or not, that was his fifth album was my second best album. Then his second album was my third, but for his first 5 albums were classics. Dude, all 6 number ones. Then he had Year of the Dog, which wasn't a bad album either. And that came out 4 years after his prime was up, because his prime was between 98 and 2002. But that 2006 Year of the Dog album, that was pretty good as well. He never made bad music. As recently as a couple of years ago, he had this song called Red Blood. It was for that movie that I think Tyler Perry either produced or whatever. It was called Red Blood. That was a hot song too. So he always put out a lot of bangers. All right. But understand who X is. Dark Man X. That's the dude's name. All right. Again, what did you expect this man to talk about when you call yourself Dark Man X? All right. And also, look, whenever a celebrity dies, you always have the conspiratorial shit, and we're going to get in that in a second because he did have COVID, and people are going to talk about how he got the shot and all this other bullshit. This man did not worship the devil. All right, that we got to just, the man didn't worship the devil. He has a song in his first album called Damien. Damien was basically an imaginary guy who played the role of the devil that was on your shoulders. Like usually you have a devil on one side and an angel on the other side. And interestingly enough, he and Jay-Z and Busta Rhymes made a song, and Jay-Z had a line in there saying, devil on both shoulders. In other words, referring to, I didn't have a good guy and a bad guy on the shoulder. It was a devil on my shoulders telling me what to do. Well, X talked about that devil on his shoulder trying to force him to do some wild stuff, and to the point where at the end of the song, he tried to convince him to kill his best friend. So again, X was telling you how he became how he became. And there was always some demon on his side. And that demon, the main one, turned out to be drugs. That he constantly battled against. All right? I can appreciate a dude like that who openly tell you that he's battling a demon. About 20 years ago, him and Ja Rule, because he had a couple of beefs, he and Ja Rule had a big beef. All right? And it's funny because they both came from the same clique too, the Murder Inc. clique. It was him, Jay-Z, and Ja. But yeah, he decided to go after Ja. I don't know what sparked it, but something crazy sparked it. But DMX put out a song where, and while he was promoting it, he was saying how Ja Rule was gay. He said Ja Rule had some homosexual experiences. So Ja Rule came back and just brought out that DMX was a crackhead. And they were all on the radio talking about this, and DMX made the statement like, yeah, okay, so what, I did crack. I mean, every real dude does shit. He said, explain fucking a man though. Explain fucking a man. It was funny. And listen, all the major beefs that DMX had, he had three major ones. Ja Rule, K-Solo, and Corrupt from the Dog Pound. And he squashed all those beefs before he left. So good for them. They all wished him well wishes and so on. K-Solo, which was maybe, you know what, they were all pretty ugly. But all of them said, listen, I'm sending good vibes to my brother. I hope he pulls through. That was good for them. But he was an avid Bible reader, all right? Obviously, when you read the Bible a lot, you're going to sound like a philosopher. Whatever, okay? I mean, the thing that appealed with everyone with X is that he showed his warts, right? Openly. Okay, how many people in entertainment do that? All right, so for people who are saying, why are you loving this guy so much? It's because he didn't hide who he was. All right, all of us have this a side of us that we try to hide to the world. He was openly going through his struggle in public. All right, I mean, Whitney, who we know was a druggie, she never did that. She lied about that. Michael, who among other things, he was drugged out. He was a junkie. Never mentioned it. And you had family members and everybody trying to say, nah, he wasn't on drugs. And of course, all the conspirators. See, if DMX didn't openly tell you that he was on drugs, you would deny it to the end. And the conspiracies of that COVID and all other shit would really pick up steam. X had to tell you that he was on drugs. Prince, another one. All right? completely and totally drugged out on syrup, all right? And no, Percocet. Had to freaking stop a plane in midair. He was so drugged out. But you never heard anyone say, yeah, these guys were on drugs. X lets you know openly this is why this guy was so beloved and so respected. So, you know, like I said, I'm glad that he resolved all his beefs. When I say that he was a complex dude, I mean, look, he had a song called It's On, right? Like, he would, in that song, there was knowledge, there was street knowledge, but then there was regular knowledge. Like for example, in the song, he would say, always keep my enemy the closest. Okay, you don't have to be in the street to really take that as knowledge, right? Always make sure you know where the toast is, which was the gun. Okay, so he told you one thing, you're like, okay, yeah, this is something. But the other thing, I mean, unless you own a gun, unless you're in the streets, that doesn't help you at all. Then there's always cover my tracks when I creep. All right. Then he says, always get away when I'm done to relax today. Then he says, I always know the rules of the game before I play. Okay, that sounds good. Always know to keep enough dough so I'm good for the day. Okay. Always walk my dogs off the leash. Okay. Always get my thoughts off the streets. So again, but my thing is, if you're not in the streets, why would you take, people are trying to put him into one box. That's not what this dude was. That's not what this dude was. Then he said, always pay my respects to the dead. Again, pretty good advice. Always take at least one blunt to the head. Street shit. So again, this dude was he's like Pac. Just a very complex individual. Here's some more shit. Never try to knock off the rock on the block that ain't yours. Okay, never take a man's life because you hate yours. Okay? Let me stop there for a second. Most of the pain that DMX inflicted when he was in public, he hurt himself. Most of what DMX did, he hurt himself. Go look through his rap sheet. Any assault of any women, anything where he's caused major pain to other people. He impersonated a cop. He was caught on drugs. With guns. Everything was self-inflicted. So it's not like dude, was causing a lot, especially after he got famous. Now coming up, I can't say that. But, going through a lot of what X was going through, listen, I've been hearing, I really can't stand some of these dudes who say that he is the cause of a lot of, he put out a lot of toxicity and he was a bad image for black men and blame rap or what have you. Listen, no, he's not exactly Mary Poppins, right? And again, these guys who critique rap, but whenever you hear someone critique rap and say that rap is the reason why black people are where they're at, because there are people who actually think this goofiness, just ask them one question, because this should be a ready question to answer that bullshit. Man, these guys, all they do is talk about guns and bitches and hoes and niggas and this and that. I'm like, okay, I understand that. So what's your playlist? Just ask these dumb motherfuckers, what is your playlist? It's a very simple question. What is your playlist? Because see, if someone came up to me and asked me that question, I can tell you what my playlist is. I listen to rap. I listen to hardcore rap like DMX. I also have an 80s mixtape with 80s music like Cyndi Lauper and George Michael and Phil Collins and that type of shit. 500 songs, I can listen to that. I listen to classical music, Beethoven, Bach, Chopin. I got about 200 song mixtape of that. Reggae music, all right? Old school, rockers, that type of stuff. I listen to soca. I listen to rock and roll. Metallica, Def Leppard, AC/DC, which interestingly enough, you want to talk about devilish shit. But see, these dudes, they're not interested in that. They don't listen to that shit. They don't have an alternative right there at their disposal. Music is broad. Rap music is broad. Rap music, I said in my last video talking about Nas X, rap music, you can put together an entire year's worth of rap music, no cursing, no niggas, no bitches, and you still call us a bunch of niggas. And ask these people, okay, like I hear people say, well, would you play this around your kids? Okay, would you watch The Godfather around your kids? What type of music, what kind of type of movies do you watch? Do you watch Game of Thrones around your kids? With the nudity and the breastises all over the place? So it really comes down to you don't want to see or notice the pain that black people go through. But most importantly, you don't want to go to the source of what caused that. Because DMX didn't cause himself, you know. You don't just wake up one morning and become a DMX. There's something else that starts that. From where, you know, because he brought up how his best friend gave him a blunt laced with crack. How does a guy at 14 get into a situation with a dude who's smoking to smoke a blunt at 14? But where did the drugs come from? You don't want to deal with that, do you? I listened to one guy, supposedly black, pro-black or whatever, saying, I don't want to hear about white supremacy and this. Yeah, well, nigga, it is something that is very real. Okay? You can't deny social engineering. That's something you can't run away from. So I don't want to know, obviously you want to know how he's sitting there smoking drugs as a 14-year-old, but I also want to know the source of how the drugs got into that dilapidated community to begin with. Or more importantly, how the community got dilapidated. And 9 times out of 10, when you do the digging and when you do the research, the person who is responsible at the other end usually has a white face and they're male. So, you know, underneath all the madness, one thing about X, he was a very intelligent, when you heard him speak, he was a very intelligent dude, right? Again, check out his interviews. In fact, there's an interesting story about DMX and how he got put on. DMX, it took him 14 years to get put on, all right? He was about 27, 28 till before he really, I guess like between 25, I mean, because he was on his first song, I believe, was with him, DMX, him and Jay-Z on Mike Geronimo's album. You got Mike Geronimo, if you know rap, you know who Mike Geronimo is. But yeah, him and Jay-Z and Nas, I believe, if I'm correct, they were on the same song on Mike Geronimo's album. How about that? All right. This was back, I believe, in 1995. But the way DMX got on, obviously he had to pay dues, he had to do battle raps and so on. Well, this is an article, it says DMX shares a wild story of rapping for Lyor Cohen with a wired jaw. Check this out. In the spirit of DMX appreciation, it's sometimes necessary to step back in time to explore hip-hop original story. While it has some grim moments, there are also occasions where things align in the right way at the right time. That was the case with DMX, was trying to get a record deal and wound up having to spit bars for label executive Lyor Cohen, but whatever, with his jaw wired closed. And it said, DMX, who started as a battle rapper as a teen growing up in Yonkers, New York, DMX used to drop rhymes as a battle rapper. He eventually established a solid reputation for his very street, very hard flow with a menacing bark, and attracted the attention of budding producer Irv Gotti and the Dean brothers, which included Swiss Beats, Darren, and Joe Quinn. So this was like back in the day. I mean, they all came up together pretty much. Between the time DMX first started out taking rap opponents and his debut album, he received multiple offers and deals that weren't always the right fit. However, he was still in the streets doing crime as a stick-up kid, and that's usually the case with a lot of these rappers who start off, right? A lot of these rappers who you see in the beginning, they got their album deal, you think, they got put on, but they're still kind of heavy in the street. There's a story, I don't know if it's true, like if you know Wu-Tang, if you looked at their first album, Ghostface always wore a mask. Word is, I don't know if it's true or not, word is Ghost wore a mask because he was wanted for a robbery. He was wanted for a robbery, or he did some sort of dirt, some sort of crime, and he was kind of hiding from police. So that's the story behind Ghost wearing the mask in the first album. I gotta, it's something to confirm, but it wouldn't surprise me. And Wu-Tang, and if anyone who knows Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with, read their backstory. They were in the streets heavy, but yeah, you got some of these dudes are still heavy in the street, and this is what DMX was. So he was still doing crime as a stick-up kid. Both worlds collided. It was during one of those times when fortune and misfortune crossed paths for a new opportunity. And he said by the late 90s, DMX was part of the Rough Riders crew and continued to work with Gotti trying to get a record deal. Gotti was instrumental in setting up a studio session with Def Jam's Lyor Cohen, a man whose names always rung bells in hip-hop circles. DMX was one of nearly a dozen battle rappers set to show up for the meet, but he had to do it with his mouth wired shut. Think about that. Dude had to do a rap battle, basically something that would determine whether he gets put on, whether he gets a record deal. And this dude is doing a heavy rap battle with his mouth wired shut. I mean, some people can't even talk with a wired mouth. This dude has to rap with a wired mouth. And it said during his interview with Talib Kweli, he explained that he robbed people who robbed something else the day before. So I'm guessing this dude, he probably robbed a lot of drug dealers, all right? Which, they got the money, right? But then he said the original victim and his crew caught up with him and didn't believe he was not the perpetrator. And DMX was stomped out. So they stomped out. So he got stomped out before he came up. And it resulted in a broken jaw. So he told Kweli the hospital initially sent him home with a swollen neck. So, I mean, his neck was swollen with abscesses that could have killed him in his sleep. He returned and doctors treated him and then wired his jaw shut. So this dude's neck was probably killing him. And plus, his mouth was wired. So like I said before, this dude had to become a friend to pain. And it said still, DMX was determined to show up to the Yonkers battle session where Cohen was on deck. And he said, I remember I had a black hoodie on. I had a 40 ounce that I cradled under my arm, he said. And when I walked in, they parted like the Red Sea. So this dude, his whole aura, I guess he always had that spirit with him. He said DMX recalled how he had to rap through his teeth because he couldn't open his mouth, but Cohen paid attention. He hid his enthusiasm, he said of Cohen. I couldn't really tell, but I knew that I put that work in. The rapper also had a few hot singles out that helped his shine. Then it said how DMX sealed a deal with Def Jam. Now, Interestingly enough, during that time, this is just off this article, his wife has stories about how she had to basically look for him in the streets in order to get him to these record companies, because not only was he in the streets and robbing people, he was a drug addict. Remember, dude started his journey with drugs back at 14. He's like 25, 26 in the mid 90s, basically still strung out on crack. So his wife used to look for him in crack houses and, all sorts of places. And they were eventually, she would basically look for dude in crack houses, and she would tell the executives like, yeah, he has some problems here and there, and, we have to pick him up from search. She had to come clean and say, yo, listen, this dude is on drugs. This dude, we got to take him out of crack houses and shit. They almost lost a deal because he was that much in the streets. But it says in 1998, DMX made it official with the label and dropped 2 studio albums that year. He dropped Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, and It's Dark and Hell is Hot. In the early 2000s, he left Def Jam and went to Sony following a now squashed beef with his homie Jay-Z. But in 2019, he returned to the label with a new deal. Fans can keep up with the rap legend DMX on his Instagram page, where he's sharing updates about an upcoming albums and other projects. So, word is, by the way, he finished an album and a documentary before he passed. So that album is gonna sell off the rack. As I said, he's still got skill. The man still got skill. So the album's gonna sell off the rack. The documentary is gonna do well. So yeah, man. But yeah, dude had his mouth wired shut. But that just shows you the perseverance of this dude and what he had to go through just to get put on. I've said a few times, this dude, if it wasn't for the drugs, he would have been the next Tupac. If it wasn't for the drugs, dude would have been the next Tupac. He had the rap skills. He had hit albums. He had the charisma. He was a sex symbol. All right? I mean, obviously, because people, when Pac died, understand, when Pac died and when Big died, they left a huge void. Obviously, Jay-Z benefited from that, but X also came in, and X was like during that, like I said, Pac died in 96. X from 98 to 2003, he had that long run. He kind of filled that void. But X could rap at a high level. He had the hit albums. He had charisma. He was a sex symbol. He was a good actor too. He's a good actor. In Belly, obviously the classic. Exit Wounds. If you see Exit Wounds with Steven Seagal, they had this dude doing martial arts, and I'm like, what? Where'd that come from? But yeah, this man had it all. He had all of that. This is where, and they tried to get a couple of people to be the next Pac. I mean, Ja Rule, obviously, right? But Ja Rule went to pop. In my opinion, Ja Rule just went to, he decided to go pop. All right? But intelligent, just like Pac. Philosophical, just like Pac. Okay? But I would never label him as the GOAT or one of the greatest spitters ever. He's good, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah, man. So as far as I just wanted to go through the good of X, the bad of X. All right. There was a story, like, for example, that Fat Joe gave where he and X and Big Pun, they were hanging out, or they came from a show. This is when they were all stars, obviously. And they stopped at a gas station, and X ran up on a dude, I guess pulled out a gun and robbed him. Okay? That story ain't cool to me. That ain't cool. Fuck X for doing something like that. right? But, and I guess this is just, it's like old habits are hard to break, but come on, dude. You're a huge star and you do that shit. But again, X gave a lot of pain to people because he was hurt. But it's not like he left unscathed. All right? He paid a heavy price for a lot of the shit that he did. A lot of his sins. I mean, we walk through America and we see, go down to Washington, D.C., you see all these monuments of freaking pedophiles and slave owners and all that shit. And they are lionized throughout time. So, where they don't seem to have to pay a price, X, for all his sins, he had to pay a price. All right? So, I'm not going to sit here and, I'm not going to look past it. But you have to look at the man. You have to look full circle at who the man is, okay, to make a full judgment. The good, the bad, the ups, the downs, the pain, the love, That's how you look at a dude like X. And by the way, all right, X, there's this narrative by some people that X never spoke about black subjects, which is, was he Chuck D or KRS? No. But he talked about holding it down for his dogs. He talked about holding it down for his people. All right? I mean, he did it in another way. Here's what X never did. And this is just for guys who want to get famous and think that this is a route to go. X never threw black people under the bus. Okay? That goes a long way for your legacy. Because that will come up. All right? You think that Kanye, when he goes, that's not going to come up? You think. Just think of some of these stars that decide to, like Morgan Freeman. You think that people aren't going to remember some of the shit that Morgan Freeman said? Regarding, I don't want to hear about how there's oppression or what. It's some stupid shit like that. All right, it was in his interview with Don Lemon. Not throwing your people under the bus. Your legacy will go absolutely far. And X never did that. Again, all of X's hurt was self-inflicted. He fucked himself up. Just something to keep in mind. So, look. Usually, unfortunately, when you have something like this happens, okay, where people are mourning or people are upset, and I gotta speak on these niggas because, on YouTube, unfortunately, all right, it's become a haven for trolls and goofballs. Like on YouTube, you don't need a degree. You don't need a background check, okay? You don't need any skills. You get people on there with no type of job prospects. They have rap sheets and they find out that YouTube can be a hustle to make some extra money. And there's no better way on YouTube to make extra money than to be a fucking troll. All right? So basically, one of the people that I've noticed that decided to go after DMX, and there were a couple of them for dumb reasons, and listen, I'm no celebritard. Anyone who's been on this channel and watched me for a brief time, I'm not a celebritard. I'm not here to save celebrities or anything like that, but I try to keep things into perspective. All right? And hopefully throughout I gave a balanced look at DMX. But you got clowns like this. Like, his name is Charleston White. All right? I don't know if this cat's a comedian. All right? Supposedly he wants to be the next, like a bootleg Cat Williams or whatever. This dude decides to troll DMX. Right? So he starts putting out a series of videos on DMX. Okay? Like, DMX, well, DMX is an addict and he got what he deserved. All right? Or that, and I'm gonna get into this too, how he made this a series. Like, he made a series of videos coming after DMX, right? Talking about karma is gonna get you, or he responds again about, he responds to Steven Jackson for coming at his neck about DMX, or he says, I told you DMX was a lying dope fiend about, the guy lacing his thing with DMX. And obviously he's saying that because the guy who DMX accused of lacing his blunt with drugs, he denied it. Like, what the fuck was he supposed to do? He just admit, like, yeah, I was the one who did it. Right now, when everybody is is up on DMX. But this is what this guy does. He's a fucking troll. So he talks about how, listen, he made a choice. Yeah, DMX is a drug addict. We understand that. But he's trying to say that we weren't crying for him 2 days ago. We weren't crying for him last week. All right? You saw how bloated he was during the battle with Snoop. You weren't crying for him then. Well, no, because he was alive and he was seen to be doing what he loved. We didn't think he was sick. All right? We don't have to cry for him every day. What, did you put out a series of videos saying help DMX? But here you are right now while he's doing this after he's in a coma, so he decides to troll the dude. It's ridiculous. And this is all in his titles, but here's why this guy's a piece of shit. As you know, the Derek Chauvin trial is happening. Right? So he writes in his community section. He said, Dear black people, the George Floyd trial and DMX, the dope fiends of discussion. Let's rap. I'm not interested in being inboxed about the George Floyd trial. He was a dope fiend. What the fuck does that have to do with what happened to him and why the trial is happening to begin with? And he calls it the George Floyd trial. How about that? Or any updates on DMX, another dope fiend. Who out there that's crying or that's mourning for DMX denied that he's a dope fiend? My point is, obviously, there's more to him than just being a dope fiend. Last time I checked, both of these individuals were dope fiends or drug addicts, as the proper folks would say. These individuals made poor choices that impacted their lives in negative ways. This is a guy, by the way, in Charleston White, who talks about how he's in gangs, and every time you see him, he's in a car with the grills on his bottom teeth, smoking what appears to be a blunt. And he's talking about the proper folks and talking about negative ways. If any of you want to affect the lives of dope fiends or drug addicts for your proper folks, go to your local impoverished communities where individuals like both of them are suffering. Oh, please. This dude, this has nothing to do with the dope. But see, he goes after DMX, but then he goes after George Floyd. And here's another thing he says about George Floyd. He says, man, George Floyd should be happy he got kneed in his neck by a cop. And I'm paraphrasing, but this is in his videos. George Floyd should be happy he got kneed in his neck by a cop, because how else was he going to get $26 million? All right? His daughter's set for life. His family's set for life. And, hell, if all I need to do is get kneed by a cop to get $26 million to make my family, to give my family a seal legacy, I'd do it. Throughout this video, as I said early on, DMX made millions of dollars through his records. How did that help him? Okay, they talked, and again, to taste this article in New York Post about how he lost 4 homes, how he ran through all his money because his mind wasn't right. All the money in the world isn't going to save you because your mind ain't right. So ask Charleston White if somebody kills your son, because this guy trolled George Floyd. He trolled DMX for being drug addicts. But he also went after Breonna Taylor. Said, I don't give a fuck about her. She was messing with the wrong dude. He went after Trayvon Martin. Said, I don't give a fuck about him. He should have done what he was told, or else he wouldn't have gotten shot. He went after Mike Brown. You see? So they didn't do drugs from what I've seen. So why would you go after them? But these are the people who have made a following. His video has 80, 90,000 views or whatever shit like that. And in the video with DMX, he talks about how, man, if you say the right things in a video and you put the words in the right spot, you can make some money doing this. So yeah, he's probably making a nice $10,000 or $15,000 check from YouTube. But see, here's the funny thing though, with a clown like this. This guy also said in his video, I don't give a fuck about the school shootings. Then he says, I don't give a fuck about 9/11. I'm in Texas. That happened up there. Here's a challenge to Mr. White. Put that in the title of your videos. Make it a series like you made a series of DMX and George Floyd. And write a long soliloquy like you did for them. On how much you don't give a shit about 9/11. How about this? Why don't you put in the title of your videos about something that happened with the small hats? How long will you be making that big check from YouTube if you did that? But you put these clowns on YouTube, and interestingly enough, another goofball by the name of Hassan Campbell, he co-signed this dude. He said, wait, I've peeped with Charleston White, and I peep his game. He said, this is what this fool said. He said, you got to troll like that to get black people's attention. First of all, Hassan Campbell ain't even black. Hassan Campbell, Bambaata's light-skinned fetish, his bottom bitch, that Hassan Campbell. Said he co-signs, and interestingly enough, he was trolling DMX as well. But I said this before about when speaking about DMX, how people have this skewed, logic. See, at least with DMX, X was on drugs. These two are, I don't know, maybe they could be. All right? We know that Hassan Campbell's a goofball. We know he's a murder-suicide waiting to happen. Charleston White's the same thing, sitting down bragging about how much money he got. I saw in one of his videos saying, man, I got me a $300,000 house. Please, bro. There are people out there with $3 million houses. But these are the guys who we give big platforms to and allow to fester. Nobody is celebrating the wrong that DMX did. As I said, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly with dude. I get that, but he told you, DMX told you throughout his songs, and if you just get off your high horse, stop being a coon, and listen to his songs and read his story, read his autobiography. He has an autobiography, by Earl Simmons. X by Earl Simmons. Read his autobiography. And he'll tell you how he got to where he was. He told you that in each one of his albums. Interestingly enough, people talk about how dark his songs was. Don't you know one of his signature songs called The Convo? That was on his first album. The Convo. No cursing. Don't you know that song could actually be played in church? He has prayers on his albums. All his prayers can be prayed in church. You have stories from all these people. He's always praying. He was constantly in a battle with his demons. I can respect that. I don't have to accept the dirt that he did because he's done a lot, but I can respect that he had the guts to go up against his demons and not succumb to it. And in the end, built a pretty lucrative career. It ended tragically, but He's left a legacy. Watch his movies, man. I would say watch Belly if you get a chance. Watch Belly. Watch Exhibit. Watch all his movies. And as I said, this dude can spit. There's never going to be another. This is a once in a generation type of dude. All right? Again, when people die like this, unfortunately, people are going to say, oh, well, DMX, he's the GOAT, or he's one of the best. Nah, don't do that. All right? He's a great spitter, but no one's ever put him in the GOAT category. Right? He's a totally different artist. But yeah, man, I mean, with those clowns I just mentioned, let them keep doing what they're doing, because they'll never go after the real. They're going to troll black people all day. Just like him, just like Tommy. But look what they did to RZA and Pharaoh. Right? Look at what they did to RZA and Pharaoh. What do you think? Did you say one wrong word, they won't take out that channel? They wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you're gone, homie. And then big checks are gone too. They're not giving you any sort of residual or any sort of severance pay when you gone. You gone. So, yeah, man. Never gonna be another one like X, bro. All right? Check out his catalog. Condolences to his family, right? And just remember, a man like this, a man like X, never dies. So, peace. Share this video. Subscribe. Cash App. And big up on yourself.